Okay, I'm going to start calling names. Yogi? Okay, thank you. Okay, I just want to say welcome everyone to the 2022 Meet the Candidates Night. I'm Donna Smith, chair of this year's nominating committee and the moderator for tonight's event. Shortly, you will have the opportunity to hear from the 7 candidates who are running for the Longshore Lake Foundation's Board of Directors in order to fill the 4 open positions for the 2022-2023 board term. Before we jump into the opening statements by the board candidates, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to the members of this year's nominating committee. And I'm going to ask you to please stand. Cookie Lamb, Kathy Larson, Stan Placharzik, and Howard Tillman. Thank you. Thank you. One last reminder, please plan to stay after the event since the bar will still be open. And you can get a chance to meet the candidates on a more casual basis. Now let's introduce the candidates. We have them seated in alphabetical order. And the candidates are Philip Baer, Deborah Brazelton, Brent Brody, William Cattrall, Steve Katz, Nathan Zuckerman, and we also have Alan Schultz by teleconference, but we've been having technical difficulties. It's
cut off 8 times.
Yeah, so it may not likely work, but we're going to try our best. And also, I just want to remind you that although in your election packets there included a biography from an 8th candidate, John Begani, he withdrew his name for consideration after the packets were mailed. So he will not be participating into tonight's forum. Please keep that in mind as well as you vote, since any votes for Mr. Begani will not be counted. Each candidate will now give an opening statement that is not to exceed 3 minutes. There will be a warning signal given 30 seconds before the time limit to give candidates time to wrap up their statements so that all of the candidates have an equal time to speak. We have more candidates this year running for the board, I think, than has been for a long time. Candidates will share with you their opinions, ideas, and more importantly, why they've decided to place their names in nomination. After all of the candidates have completed their opening statements, there will be a question and answer session whereby attendees may submit questions to the candidates prior to, as you saw back there with the cards, or during the Q&A about matters and issues which interest them. So if you have questions during the Q&A, please feel free to go down the middle aisle, write it down on a card, and then come back. I also want to say that since this is an informational meeting, this is not a town hall meeting, there will be no residents speaking or asking questions during the Q&A section. We're trying to make this as effective as possible so that all of the candidates have an opportunity to share their ideas with you. So let's hear from the candidates going in alphabetical order. So the first one up is Philip Baer.
Good evening. My name is Philip Baer, or as I am more commonly known, Nace's husband. We became owners in Longshore Lake when we built our home in 1999, and we became full-time residents in 2006. And barring an unforeseen meteor strike, we plan to stay put until we are unable to live here without assistance. We value this community, its location, the lake, above average lot sizes, and most especially the diverse members of this neighborhood. That was what attracted us from the beginning. Longshore is a community of active individuals and families. I honestly never aspired to serve on the Longshore Lake Board of Directors. I became a board member when I was invited to fill an unexpired term of a resident who left the community. Prior to that, I was active in forming what is now the Emergency Planning Committee which started as the Hurricane Planning Committee in the aftermath of Hurricane Irma in 2017. Like many of you sitting here this evening, my historical perspective as a resident with a view from outside was that there were a lot of things that could be done better. We are all survivors of the damage done to our community by our previous administrator, and we owe a great debt of gratitude to the members of the previous board of directors that brought us out of that darkness with their tireless efforts to dig up and rebury skeletons. Their efforts paved the way for our community to begin to take a look forward. Longshore Lake has been rebranded with a new logo, an updated entry and bridge, and an administrative embrace of change, giving members and guests a clear indication that we are not just another tired and aged-out retirement community. Our proximity to major routes of transportation, good schools and shopping, and above-average lot sizes make Longshore Lake attractive to younger residents. We may not see these families represented in committee and board functions, but their needs and desires are no less important. Owners living here longer than 5 years are greatly benefiting from this influx of new and younger families, as reflected in our rising home values. I reluctantly accepted the invitation to fill this seat on the board, recognizing there's no contribution to be made by standing on the sidelines and cheering or booing. Longshore Lake has a unique opportunity to take a look at its strengths and weaknesses, assets and threats and opportunities, and to develop a strategy that will guide us to a great future. I'm not on the board with a personal agenda. I strongly believe we've initiated a bottom-up understanding of what our residents desire. It's been an honor to fill the vacancy of a resigning member of Longshore Lake HOA, and it will be an even greater honor to be a part of bringing our community to its full potential. Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me? No. How about now? A little more? I'm short. Better? Okay. Thank you for coming. My name is Deborah Brazelton. I was born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago, and I lived there my entire life until moving to Florida. Okay, thanks. Lived in Chicago suburbs my entire life until moving here in June of 2020. My husband, Michael, and I have been married for 28 years, and we have 2 young adult children. We looked for 2 years at literally dozens of communities from Estero to Naples. And when we came over that bridge and drove through this community, we knew it was going to be our new home. We absolutely love living here. I've been an active member of the community literally since day one. I joined the Women's Club the day of my closing. I participated in the Luminaria event this year in the, sorry, I lost my place. In the Winterfest committee and co-chaired the wine poll. Last year I was asked to join the Architectural Review Board, and I've served on that commission for nearly a year. Career-wise, I've had 2. I was a nurse midwife for 12 years at a large teaching hospital in Chicago, and I was an attorney, I still am, for 26 years. For 22 of those years, I owned and operated a family law firm. What's relevant, I think, to this run is that throughout my life, I've volunteered in many, many different capacities. All of that is on my bio. I understand budgets, financial statements, Robert's rules, board operations, and importantly, ethics and fiduciary responsibility. There were 2 positions that I held in the village where we moved from in Illinois that I think are relevant to what's going on in Longshore Lake. I chaired the Zoning Board of Appeals for 7 years and served on the Plan Commission for 4. Those are volunteer-appointed positions, but they all involve property rights, development, real estate codes, statutes. In each of those positions, with every single decision I made, I listened to all of the information that was presented, carefully considered it before rendering a decision, and I'll do the same if you elect me to this board. I have 4 main priorities that I'd like to talk about, hopefully when the questions and answers are posed, because I have no time in 3 minutes. Communication, transparency, our governing documents, and revitalization. Just in summary, I know what this job entails, and I believe I have the necessary experience, and I certainly have the drive and ambition to do it. I'm a full-time resident. I'm here all year round. I am retired, and I will commit my full energy and time to this job if you elect me. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me? Hello, neighbors. Hello, staff. Hello, home audience. Thank you, Rachel, for running the camera. My name is Brent Brody. I've been in the community for 18 plus years. My wife, Terry, is back there, sitting in the back row. We've raised 2 daughters here. I'd like to give an endorsement to the Collier County Schools. I think they did a fabulous job with our daughters. I assume you all read the resumes, so I'm not just going to go through my resume and let you know what's on there. We have a lot of smart people up here. We're really smart on paper. But I think what it really comes down to is leadership and communication skills. And that is what I'd like to base my campaign on going forward. I used to work at GE, and I've studied GE leadership traits with inclusiveness and clear thinking, and I think I've learned a lot from that process. I also have an MBA from the University of Michigan, in which we studied leadership. I've been a sales leader for salespeople. They're the biggest whiners in the organization all the time. They deal with customers, and they point out what's wrong with your company and how you fail to execute. Yet, when you lead salespeople, you have to listen to them, and you have to address their needs and concerns going forward. I also am the youngest candidate up here, but yet I have an old school philosophy. I pick up the telephone and call people, and I would appreciate it if you'd call me back. I can't do this without your help. And you'll see me handing out business cards, and they're like, what's he handing out business cards for? Is this guy crazy? I want you to call me. Some of you have, but not many. So I'm all about communication and leadership. And I believe that my combination of communication and leadership skills give me a unique ability to unite the community. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bill Cattrall, and I have lived in Longshore Lake for over 5 years. I have served on many committees, including finance, foreclosure, and audit committees, and I was elected to the board 2 years ago, and I've served as secretary, vice president, and now I'm proud to be completing my first year as president of the board of directors. I've been in many businesses in my lifetime, and I have much experience in dealing with customers. But being on the board of an HOA opens you up to many other possibilities. I've learned about Florida laws, advisory committees, Robert's Rules of Order, operations of a clubhouse, plumbing, and air conditioning. And I've been fortunate to work with a wonderful staff, Lisa Luster and her staff here at Longshore Lake. 2021 was an exciting year. With the impact of COVID winding down, many residents started to return to the club. Food and beverage sales started to climb, and it was a great year for home sales. The club showed a profit in operations in 2021 and is on budget for 2022. I am proud of the things that this board has been able to accomplish this year. Probably the biggest visual change was the remodeling of the bridge. But we also installed video cameras at the entrance and exit areas of Longshore Way, and to improve the safety in that area. The first phase of the repair and restoration of our shoreline was started. And for the long-term growth of Longshore Lake, we started the Strategic Revitalization Committee to study the plan for the future. Under the guidance of a professor from FGCU, we conducted focus groups, and now we are at the first step of writing the strategic plan to be our roadmap for the next 5 years. I want to say thank you to my fellow board members. I know we worked well together in this past year, and we had a good time while serving Longshore Lake. I thank you for attending tonight. I have enjoyed serving on the board for 2 years, and I believe I have the skills, education, and experience to serve on your board of directors. I kindly ask for your vote again. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Steve Katz. Some of you may not know me, and I'm going to try and tell you a little bit about myself. So let's start from the beginning. I was born and raised in New York, in the Bronx, if you're familiar with that. Attended City College of New York, CCNY is what it's really called, and the University of Pittsburgh Dental School. After dental school, I went into the United States Army Dental Corps, served a year stateside, and then Vietnam. But before I left for Vietnam, I married my wonderful wife, who is here tonight, Fran, and we've been married for 54 years, very happily. So when I returned from Vietnam unscathed, I opened my dental practice in the northern suburbs of New York, and practiced dentistry for about 35 years. We started with one, but wound up with 3 locations. Managed quite a few people, made many decisions, which is important when you're on the board of directors, and have done a lot of that. So once I decided that it was time to retire, we moved to Florida, and we spent some time traveling and playing golf. And I then decided I was too young to be retired. So what we did was we bought a business on Marco Island. It served ice cream and coffee. Did that for 5 years until Starbucks came along, and we decided, well, time to sell. And we then moved on to a business here in Naples, where it was gourmet takeout and catering. And that was where my son was the chef. My son is a graduate of CIA, Culinary Institute of America, like our wonderful chef here, Kevin. And he was the chef at that business. We did that for several years, but it was at a time, it was 9/11. Naples was very seasonal. So we did that just for a few years. And so I'm getting the sign, so I have to finish up. Okay, well, I hope you understand that I've had lots of food and beverage experience, and I believe that will be useful to the board and to you folks who are residents of Longshore Lake. And if you agree with that, I thank you in advance for my vote. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nathan Zuckerman. I am been a resident of the Longshore Lake since 2007, full-time, since approximately 2014. My past experience at Longshore Lake include being a member of the Longshore Lake Board for 4 years, being on the Finance Committee currently for the last 4 years, 2 years, and then previously to that also on the Finance Committee. My past experiences, I was a practicing obstetrician gynecologist, and also dealt with medical management, being a vice president of the health system, having to deal with budget, finance, and the never-ending problem with physicians. Currently, I feel that Longshore Lake is one of the best communities in the area, not only by lot size, but by location, and by the fact that it is well maintained. there has been tremendous changes in the community in terms of physical appearance, but there is still a lot more to be done. We have an excellent tennis community that is growing, and we are a very welcoming community. If you drive around, you'll notice that unlike in the past 5 years, where it seems to be an elderly community, there are a lot more younger families moving in. I want to address a few areas that I feel are important. At the last Finance Committee, in coordination with the Food and Beverage Committee, there was discussion about a minimum per household. The committee recommended to the board that there be a minimum, and the minimum would be covered by food, gratuity, and alcohol. This was deferred by the current board to the new board. To me, that is a mistake. The board has to be proactive. The board has to take a stand. Right or wrong, the board has to take a stand. The clubhouse that we are in was updated approximately 7-8 years ago to the current furniture, but itself has to be, again, rejuvenated. This would include increasing the size of the fitness, perhaps moving the administration to and out of the clubhouse location, and all this needs to be done. One of the most important things that I think is important is that there has to be more transparency of the board. At every board meeting, residents are asked for their comments. There is never a resolution of their comments. Perhaps the comments should come at the end. My own feeling is that the administration and our board should address these questions and be in direct contact with the resident who's asking the question and come to a recognized resolution. Thank you.
This is still on now.
Thank you.
Now it's off.
Okay, we'll start this. Yeah.
Okay, now we'll hear from Al.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by saying I'm sorry that I can't be with you tonight in person due to a previously long-planned family gathering, and I've been able to adjust my schedule accordingly. My wife and I have been residents at 11730 Longshore Way West for several years. And background information, I hold a graduate degrees from Pennsylvania State University and have over 40 years of experience in metallurgical operations and engineering management. I'd like to begin my allotted time by saying I originally had no aspirations to run for the board, but after reviewing things, I believe there are a number of ways that we could add value to the homeowners community. This is something I really look forward to working with, is adding value. Some examples are, I would like to increase member services and amenities for all our homeowners. For example, potentially revisiting options for bulk cable, internet, and phone. I want to work to increase our foundation reserves so that unplanned future expenditures do not require any special assessments. I want to review amenities that have high losses. I know food and beverage has been high on people's lists. I think we can look for improvements and options. And I know the Strategic Planning Committee has highlighted a number of issues around the food and beverage department, which will take significant capital expenditures if they're implemented. And I think at that time, if not sooner, we should be able to repurpose the whole food and beverage operation to better serve all of us. I want to initiate a review of our operating budget because if one looks at it carefully, you find out that our payroll costs are presently approximately 70% of our operating assessment. That does not include the reserve fund money. I want to review and initiate a system to justify the use of the deferred maintenance and capital project funds. Expenditures for the lakes, roads, and major landscaping issues are sacrosanct and can't be denied and have to be carried out on a prioritized basis. but other proposed capital expenditures need to be critically reviewed prior to realization. I'd also like to increase our homeowner participation in monthly and special meetings, because I think we should be using Zoom so everyone can get a view of what's going on in the clubhouse. And finally, I want to strive to improve monthly board meetings so they include the committee reports, financial reviews using PowerPoint,
Excuse
and potentially
me, 30
preview
seconds.
homeowner quick answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Now that we've heard from all the candidates, I want to thank you all for your insightful opening statements. Now we're on to the Q&A section, where I'll ask the candidates the questions that you have submitted. We will be adhering to these ground rules, and I ask for your unconditional support so that we can make this informational evening as effective as possible for everyone. As previously mentioned, there will be no resident comments or speaking or asking questions directly or discussion back and forth. Residents will submit their questions so I may direct them to the candidates. Written questions may be directed to one or more candidates or to all candidates. And if a question is directed to a specific candidate, the other candidates will be allowed to answer the question if they so choose. Candidates must keep their answers to 2 minutes or less, so there's equal time for all candidates to share their thoughts, and so that all residents have an opportunity to have their questions responded to. A courtesy notice, again, will be given 30 seconds before the 2 minutes are up, with a hard stop at 2 minutes to allow all the candidates an equal opportunity. We plan to conclude this event at 9 p.m. sharp or before, depending on how many questions there are. And also, one last thing, you are not allowed to phone a friend. So, yeah, that was a joke. Okay, with that, let's jump into the questions. Okay. This is to all candidates. How will you, as a board member, address differences of opinion on issues that might come before the board? And how we are going to do this, raise your hand if you would like to respond, and then we'll call on everyone that wants to respond to that question. Or if everybody wants to, we can just go down the line again. Okay, yeah. Phil? Yes.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I've been asked to repeat the question. How will you, as a board member, address differences of opinion on issues that might come before the board?
Yeah, I would like to answer this because I have some specific experience in dispute resolution that I think is relevant to this and every other board and commission I've been on. The first thing that members need to do is to listen to everything that is said to them in their official capacities. During my legal career, I obtained 3 certifications in alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, and I practiced in those areas for over 20 years. Mediation, arbitration, and collaborative law. And so the skills that I gained in those disciplines, I think, are relevant to board experience. Facilitating effective communication, building consensus, breaking impasse, generating options and alternatives, and interest-based negotiation. All these alternatives are just the opposite of the litigation-based adversarial court system that we're all used to.
Anyone else?
This is an important question. Why don't we all? Phil, you ready?
Did you want to?
I'll be glad to answer since Brett wants to ask me to answer.
The people in the back can't see you, so when you're speaking, you stand up because they can't see anything.
Okay, go ahead.
You're up next, Phil. This is a tough question. There will be conflict. There will be times when you need to find some kind of consensus and vote. As I mentioned earlier, I'm all about communication. I will talk to the other board members. And some of the other board members know I'll drive you nuts with my phone calls. I will continually communicate until I can find a consensus. I think I'm very good at that, and and I don't know what the issue is, but there will be a lot of issues. I've been to a couple board meetings now. They have issues all the time. And not everybody is going to agree, but I'm also about the data. I like to gather data. So I will survey the community. You'll see me riding my bike around asking people questions, and I will continually communicate and gather data. Once I have the data, that's when I'll make an educated decision. And hopefully I'm talking to the entire community. We have some homes that aren't on the water. I think there's 20% of Longshore Lake is not on the water. I want to represent those people also. They're very important, but I think they're underrepresented. They pay the same dues as everybody else does. So I like to ride my bike around, like to talk to people. You'll see me in my beach cruiser. It's all about communication. I will gather the data and then work with the other board members to come to a consensus. Thank you. Feels good.
If you want to answer, go ahead.
I see two different parts to this question. First of all, difference of opinions within board members. We have that come up all the time. We talk to each other. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Is this a legal question? Do we need more advice on this particular question? And between 1 month and the next, we spend a lot of time researching these issues until the consensus of the board members pretty much comes together. The difference of opinion of homeowners, now that's a different problem, because the homeowners are pretty vocal about this. So you listen to all the inputs and you try to decide who's right. And a perfect example is tonight. When we came to the board meeting, there was a particular issue that I thought one way, and I thought it was going to go one way. And as it turned out, in the middle of the board meeting, I was listening to what was going on, and I changed my mind. So you have to listen to other board members, and you have to listen as much as you can to the community. Thanks.
My response is going to be very brief. I've been on the previous board, and the previous manager was here, Sharon Murphy. Some of you may remember, some of you may not. At that point, the board rubber stamped a lot of things, whatever Sharon wanted. This is not my opinion. Controversy improves the functioning of the board. We cannot rubber stamp. We have to discuss, we have to evaluate, and then come up with a decision by the board that's best for the community at hand.
Mr. Schultz, did you want to reply to the question?
One second, please. I think we have to look at the best interest of the community, and we have to get a resolution, and we get agreement to the board. We'll have to look at both sides of the equation, and just compromise is a good word, I think. Thank you.
You can't have two votes on the same
No, I know, but I was thinking.
It's got the red light on.
Okay, great.
Okay, next question, moving on. What have you done to educate yourself about the role of a board member and what it will take for you to be an effective member of the board?
Unless you've served on the board of directors or even in committees, you may not be aware that one of the requirements to be a board member is to actually attend and to be certified and to learn, some of the legal issues and management issues. So we're all required to do that. So that's just baked into the cake, if you will. On top of that, we happen to have a really outstanding administrator here who accesses, because of her designation, a lot of really wonderful resources. One in particular that we did this past year was an all-day summit, if you will, about best practices of successful clubs. Those are the kinds of things that we have to continue to do, and if you spend time and you look for the answers, you're going to find them with the resources that were given to us to help the community.
Thank you.
When I was approached about considering a board position, the first thing I did was talk to everybody that I could, as many neighbors and friends as I could, who were willing to talk to me, past, present board members, administration, gathered information about what people want for our community and what they want from your board. I also looked at a bunch of board records. I came over to the library and read 3 years' worth of minutes, scoured the budgets, the audited financials. I read the Florida Statute 720, and I've taken that course that Phil referred to that's required of all new board members. And once I gathered that information, and based on my past experience, I felt that I had the qualifications and ability to run for this board.
Thank you.
I'll take a quick shot at it. My understanding is, what did you do to prepare for being on the board? I interviewed past board members. Quite a few of you are here tonight and have talked to me about it. Again, I solicit information. I will talk to you. They've given me good advice. One of the things they said is that everybody pays the same dues. We're all created equal. All neighbors have the same, basically vote in the community. I thought that was really important, and that's what I'm going to focus on.
As I mentioned earlier, I've had lots of experience in food and beverage, gained a lot from my son and also my daughter, who spent her entire career in the beverage industry. And in most clubs, food is a losing proposition. Well, we need to change that. We need to do better with that. And I've got many ideas about that based on the experience that I've had. And also, I also will mention that I've done some volunteering in various organizations, gained a lot of experience there, and I think I can do a lot better than we've been doing right now.
The question is, how would I prepare to be on the board? One, I have been on the board, I've been on the finance committee, I have read the rules and regulations and the covenants, and that's one of the most important things that every board member should be aware of. One thing, the rules and regulations have not been changed, nor the covenants, for years. This should be addressed and updated. And as a member of the board, I would propose that this take one of the priorities.
Mr. Schultz, would you like to answer that?
Yes, I was just saying, in my 40 years of experience, I've been working in upper management positions. I well understand how things are carried out, what boards are requiring to get things done, and how to make things happen. I believe I have the command of experience based on my work experience to make it happen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question. Do you have a particular issue you would like to address while on the board? Again, do you have a particular issue that you would like to address while on the board? And I think this time we'll start from left to right.
I'm not used to that. And there are a few issues that I think the board should address. One, I mentioned the rules and regulations. Two, the deficit in the food and beverage and a rediscussion of potential food minimum. The board has to take a firm stand. We have an excellent finance committee. And when there's a scope of a project, that cost should not be exceeded or modified by a board. All that does is take money from the reserve and we're taking money from one project to fulfill another. This has to be addressed.
As I have already mentioned, my food and beverage experience, I have a bunch of ideas that I think food and beverage can be improved, and I look forward to being able to do that. Thank you.
Can we adjust the volume a little bit? You just have to hold the microphone a little bit lower.
Okay, how's that?
Oh, no.
Okay. We've already started the issue that I think is going to be the most important issue in 2022, and that is the Strategic Revitalization Committee and the strategic plan. That document, we will finish the strategic plan, which is going to be the plan for 5 years in the future. We've already started that, and it will be finished here in a month or two. But the biggest part of that is the Revitalization Committee. We're going to be looking at architects, we're going to be looking at plans, things that need to be done to this building, and things that are wrong with this building now that nobody even talks about. There's a lot of internal issues that need to be addressed to this building, even if we did not remodel it. So the Revitalization Committee is looking at all of these problems with the club, with the building, with the amenities, and the facilities that we have. And that is going to be the my focus in 2022.
Thank you.
Are there any issues we'd like to address with the board? The biggest one, is anybody happy with Xfinity?
I am.
Okay, we got one. Internet connectivity. The home audience, I'm speaking to the children here. Am I getting a little louder? Right. So I would like to take a look at internet connectivity, different offerings along those lines as well. We'll move to the next one.
Just real quickly, I mentioned 4 things in my opening statement. Communication is first. I have no singular agenda. These are just areas I think could be improved. As a new resident, I found it difficult to find the information on our website. I think that needs to be improved with committee reports, agendas, meeting minutes posted right there. Everyone looks at the internet for information is the first thing. Related to that is transparency. We need to know what all the committees are doing. And so I'd love to see more town hall meetings where just information is presented and residents are able to ask questions. I think our governing documents need a top-down review. After I've been on ARB for nearly a year, there's conflict, which causes appeals, and everything needs to be looked at. So I'm fluent in legalese, and I'm happy to work on that. And then revitalization, as my fellow candidates have said.
So, if I remember the question, which was a while ago, it had to do with what my agenda item would be, or what single thing would I be focused on. And I think that the best way I can answer that is to say that I don't have an agenda, and my feeling is that we need to, as a community, work from the bottom up. That's exactly why we began the process of developing a strategic plan. That's exactly why we have focus groups. We've taken surveys. It doesn't matter what I want. What I want is irrelevant. What you want is what's relevant. And you have spoken. We've got fairly good, taking the temperature of the community. We know what people are looking for. We're also now very much aware, because of the strategic plan, of what the pitfalls we face here in this building right now. We've got a lot of issues that we need to address. This is the perfect time to say, if we're going to have to dig the floor up, let's go ahead and look at what else we can do to improve our experience here. And that, to me, is what it's all about. This HOA and our board and what we're doing as a community has to be about having a better experience. And that's my agenda.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes, I'd like to, somebody think I'd like to think about or improving the transparency between the board and the homeowners, so they're all better informed. I'd like to also work on improving improving our financial reporting to the homeowners, to make it easy to understand what's going on. And finally, I'd like to see if we could make some improvements to our website for the homeowners as well. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question, some of these questions are a little bit overlapping, so keep that in mind as you respond. In this question, though, it's specific with regard to the number of, what are the top 3 issues facing the community that's not revitalization, and how do you propose fixing them? What are the top 3 issues facing the community that's not revitalization? How do you propose fixing them? This is to anyone. And we'll start right to left. So, yes. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schultz, would you like to reply?
Yes, I'd like to start out. I think obviously one part of the privatization is the food and beverage operation, which needs to be rethought and repurposed. We have to think of, I would like to see if we could even see about privatizing that, look at other opportunities to do that. Secondly, as I think I pointed out, I want to add value by increasing our reserves. I don't think we need to have special assessments if we have the reserves available to us. And thirdly, I think the idea of, I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. I'll let it go with that, that's too late, Dave. I probably was going to let you know here in a moment.
That was good.
Yeah. Again, I hate numbers, top 3, top 2, whatever. And we're going to leave out revitalization. So my best response, again, is the same thing I said before. It doesn't matter what my agenda issues are, it's what yours are. And what we heard from the community, besides revitalization, is that you want some reforms in governance. And we're actively working on that. We're way overdue to change our governing documents. They're outdated, they're antiquated. You know, that's evident almost every time we have a board meeting. We need to assess committee structure. We're actively working on that. We resolved to do that at this past board meeting. We need to establish a strategic plan for the committees with a clear scope and responsibilities. We have a really excellent board right now. We have a group of people that are getting along and working together, and I just hope that that continues to be the case. The other thing that we need to do, and I agree with some of the other speakers here, is we have to have a plan for capital improvements. We visited other sites, we've looked at other communities, and the one thing that they all have in common is they have a plan to actually raise funds over the course of a period of time so that they can fund their capital improvements and not assess their members. Currently, we don't really do that, and I think that that's something that's going to be very important. Every one of these clubs we visited has revitalized their, done major campaigns every 5 to 7 years. It's been over 30 since we've done anything substantial in this club, and we're definitely due for a time. Thank you.
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I think that we need to improve communication. I said before the governing documents, and I don't want to take up your time with anything more, but the third thing is to get our younger families involved on committees, in activities, however we can, because we need to hear from them.
Phil's answer was spot on. Thank you, Phil. We need to go down just one mic or two.
You still on? Non-revitalization. One thing that has already been started and needs to continue is the shoreline erosion project. That is a big impact on our lake, which is our biggest asset at Longshore Lake. Second thing, there will probably be an ad hoc committee formed to start looking at the governing documents. Everybody has mentioned that already, but that we'll probably start as a ad hoc committee, and that'll get started probably soon after the turn of the year, fiscal year, or our year, or whatever. And I think another thing that I would like to see is more social events here, more participation at the club. The Winterfest was a good example of that, but we need more than 200 people out of the 500 coming to the club. We need 400 out of those 500 people coming to the club.
This is Lone Shore Lake. A lake is one of the most important parts of our community. That's one. Tennis is number two, very important to a lot of people who live here. And three, food and beverage. Those are the areas that we need to really pay attention to.
Okay, next question. What changes would you propose that would increase communication within the community? I'm going to start on this side.
Increase communication.
Well, communication is a vague word. You know, do you want to increase the communication from residents to the board, residents to the administration in a very succinct way? If there is a question, then it has to be addressed. There has to be transparency, and a resident, board member, or any member of the community has to be given the courtesy of an answer that is spot on.
I attended the board meeting this evening. There was hardly anybody here, which is a mistake. If you want to stay in touch with what the board is doing and have something to say about it, you need to attend some of those meetings, in my opinion.
This past year, Lisa has employed a new communications director, and we now have monthly calendars, newsletters, events, flyers. Your inbox and your email is filled every day with communications. I don't know how we could have more communications than we already have unless you open your email and read it. So if we're going to have more communications, you have to read those emails.
Communication. I think there's some outstanding examples of communication in our community right now. Lisa is a dramatic improvement over anything we've had in the past. When I ask Lisa a question, I get an immediate response. The same can be said about Cody. Cody is phenomenal. He's been here for years. When I ask him a question, he doesn't only give me an answer. He enthusiastically gives me a response. There's some residents that are outstanding at communication. The board, I don't always see that. But I also am not somebody who used to go to the board meetings all the time. I understand that. I rely on the notes and the communication that Lisa and Rachel send out. I'm okay with that. I think it comes down to the board members. I want to be an open conduit as a board member for you. I want you to pick up the phone and call me. Old school, that's all I'm asking for. And we'll communicate that way, if that works for you.
Mr. Schultz, how would you improve communication?
I think we have to up our game by utilizing various tools that we have available to us, including Zoom. We have to get people interested in coming to the meeting. That's why I pointed out a couple of the things. And the administration staff needs to be able to provide answers to general questions. This seems to be a problem at times. Thank you.
The next question is directed to Mr. Schultz. So we're going to ask him to answer first, and then any other candidate that also wants to respond may. The question, Mr. Schultz, come over here so you can hear me. What do you envision Longshore Lake looking like in 5 years? For For example, administration, dining.
Mr. Schultz?
I'm sorry, I missed that again. I appreciate it.
What do you envision Longshore Lake looking like in 5 years? For example, administration, dining.
And what administration you said then?
For example,
Administration, I think we have to, based on the figures of the payroll, I think we have to think about how we can do things more efficiently with less. That's one thing very clear to me. Give an example off the top of my head. I'm not sure we are very efficient at things we do. That's my opinion, presently.
okay, thank you. Does anyone else want to respond? All candidates, do you believe that Longshore is well managed? And if not, what changes would you implement? We'll start.
I think that Longshore is fairly well managed. Comparing it to getting an outside agency to manage our association would be a mistake. The one concern that I do have is the extent of the payroll of the administration. And I think this has to be more identified, how much is paid to each person, and then reevaluated, perhaps changing the job description.
I've been a member of several different clubs, both in New York and in Florida, and I have to say that Longshore is managed as well or better than any of the clubs that I've been a member of. I've been on the board of some of those, and I give them a lot of credit.
I also believe that Longshore Lake is well managed. We have an excellent administration and staff. We have been profitable for a good many years that I can remember. We have a good amount of reserves ready for the projects that we want to do on a yearly basis. And we've had clean audits. So the auditors looking at our books have all given us clean audits. So, as everybody has said before, I think Longshore Lake is very well managed.
I too agree that we're well managed and we have incredibly dedicated staff. The committee that I'm on, our staff person is on top. It is the most well-functioning committee I've ever been on. You see people here from morning till late at night on a regular basis. I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah, I think the key point here is unless you have walked in the shoes of the people that work for you in this community, you have absolutely no idea what goes on. I will say that I would be one of those people before I got on board. We have a great administrator. Lisa's awesome. Cody's fantastic. The people that they work with are outstanding. We have good communications. People are always talking about transparency and communication here tonight. We're only as transparent as your participation is. And again, to the point, we have board meetings every month, and they're so poorly attended. And yet, I get calls. I've had people ask me questions about the minimum. What happened with the minimum? Well, guess what? You all were made aware of what happened with that discussion because it was put out in communication the day after that board meeting. So again, read your minutes, read the communication that's coming to you from the community, and spend some time up here. I guarantee you, your eyes will be open once you've experienced what goes on in this building on a regular day. And there are no regular days.
Mr. Schultz?
Yeah, I think we have to to understand exactly what we're getting for $1.6 million in payroll costs every year. And we need to know the deliverables, or what the people are, what are expected from the people as deliverables. We know there's a lot that goes on, but I think we have to be clearer and communicate what each one of the people who are on staff are doing.
Thank you. There are several questions that are almost the same thing. They're related to a topic that has been brought up, and that is all candidates, what is your position on minimum charges for everyone at the restaurant bar? I just want to see if there's some, I guess that's the gist of it. Let me repeat it again. What is your position on minimum charges for everyone at the restaurant bar? I think we start with Mr. Schultz.
Mr. Schultz, would you like to reply to that?
Yeah, I would, I'm not absolutely familiar with that, but I would like to say this is part of repurposing the whole restaurant and bar situation, so that we can get a better look and have an understanding of what's going on. I just don't think a restaurant that runs 4 days a week and 3 days for lunch will ever make its way, and we're subsidizing that, unfortunately.
Thank you.
So if you can't comment on the charges that you said, we have to rethink it. Not do away with it, but rethink it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been in the restaurant industry, and Lisa is faced with some enormous challenges right now. Staff shortages, the real estate values in Naples are driving some people out. Lisa's lost some good employees already. And to try to staff a restaurant with a minimum charge, what will happen is everybody's gonna come at the end of the month, and the restaurant's gonna get slammed. So I would be against a minimum. And I think we have ongoing challenges with staffing and service. When you leave and you go on a Immokalee Road, I know a lot of people, I love the idea because we don't really want to go anywhere this time of year. You get on Immokalee Road and you get hammered. It would be awesome to be able to just stay right here. But hiring staff is difficult for a really good high-end restaurant, let alone in a community like this where it's demanding.
The idea of a minimum was a bright idea of about 3 people last year. And it went through the Finance Committee, and it was not an overwhelming success in the Finance Committee. I believe it would have been about 5-4 or 5-5, depending on people who were present or not. So it really came out of that committee with not overwhelming support. And when it hit the board, and we got to study the items in the minimum, it just didn't hold water. Again, we don't have the capacity to do it. We don't have the new facilities to do it. We were sort of in the middle of COVID, so it failed miserably, and no, I'm still not for it.
The fact that it has failed in the past, I don't think is a reason to reject it. I would say that there are a lot of people who live here in Longshore Lake who never come in here for dinner, for lunch, for anything. And I think a reasonable minimum would encourage them to do it, to try it, to see how good it is, because it's very good. And I'd really like to see that happen.
I myself feel that a minimum is a necessity. I disagree with what was recommended, that include gratuities and alcohol. Most communities only use a minimum for food, and I think the minimum should be a set amount on a yearly basis, and you could utilize that minimum up right from January through November. If you do not use your minimum, then you could use it to purchase steaks or anything from the kitchen to utilize your minimum. It is not lost, and it will help the Food and Beverage Administration.
question. With revitalization of the clubhouse and amenities at the forefront, it is foreseeable that not everyone will agree on all proposals. As such, what experience or training do you have in resolving disputes and disagreements? So what experience or training do you have in resolving disputes and disagreements? We'll start with Nick.
Previous question was answered by Deborah. Now do they want,
I think we all answered a similar
they
question.
want the question repeated?
Deborah didn't answer that.
It's already been answered.
They choose whether or not to be
Oh, okay.
to answer.
Gotcha.
Repeat the question.
Okay, here we go. We're going to repeat the question. With revitalization of clubhouse and amenities at the forefront, it is foreseeable that not everyone will agree on all proposals. As such, what experience or training do you have in resolving disputes and disagreements?
One, it's going to be impossible for everybody to agree on the renovation and rejuvenation of the clubhouse at Longshore Lake. My experience as a vice president of medical affairs in the health system and a medical director in a hospital gave me the opportunity of addressing diversity and coming to a good resolution. This is what is important.
As I've mentioned previously, I've been a member of several different country clubs, and this issue comes up all the time. Things get old. Things need to be replaced. Things need to be refreshed. You can't just let it sit there and get old and not useful and pleasant looking. And things in the kitchen need to be changed. It really needs to be considered very carefully.
Yes, I have been involved in an arbitration or so, and it's very important to have the facts on your side.
I think we had a similar question previously. Every board is going to have disputes, either between board members or with whoever they represent. And my particular experience is in arbitration, mediation, collaborative law.
I don't know if my past experience has anything to do with the question, but I'll give it a shot. I was an employer for 25 years. I ran a business that grossed about $3 million a year. Conflict resolution is life. But again, this is not, if our revitalization is about conflict, then we are missing the point. And revitalization isn't, oh, we're going to blow the clubhouse up and build a new clubhouse. Again, if you're not reading your emails and understanding what's going on and what we've done with the strategic plan so far, then you're really, really misinformed. The revitalization is about experience. And what we're trying to do in this community, what we'd like to do as a board, is to increase everybody's good experiences here. We have so many assets. We have a great lake. But we have 100 neighbors that don't live on the lake. How are they experiencing the lake? If you haven't thought about that, that would be something that I think you should think about, because they, as somebody's already mentioned, they pay the same dues as the rest of us. But we don't currently have the ability to do that. We have people that can't play tennis and want to play another sport and want to have an activity where they can be socially engaged with their neighbors. So we have got to add other amenities and other things that we are also researching with other clubs are doing with great success and are bringing in income to their food and beverage. So again, the minimum question, we don't have enough to offer to be able to get away with charging them.
I think the question, if I'm not mistaken, the question about revitalization of the clubhouse, is that correct, ma'am?
I believe it was about how would you settle conflicts and disputes, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes, that was it.
Okay, well, I've spent 40 years working in operations management, and we always had issues. And we also had spent time in engineering, looking over projects and getting management and getting consensus among groups, whether it was eventual people or whatever. And I think it's a matter of compromise and making sure that everybody gets buy-in on the final solution for success.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. This question is directed to Deborah. Is Longshore Lake looking outside its borders enough to address unchecked growth, traffic, new developments, and schools in Collier County? And other candidates may respond as well.
That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer. I'll tell you what I do know. I learned through preparing, to decide whether I was going to run for this, that there's like a council of presidents, past presidents of HOAs that meets with the county, and that there's a Vailwood Association that Lisa, as our representative, is on. I know they're dealing with bushes that obstruct Vailwood. I don't know what the past presidents do with the county, but love to learn.
Anyone else want to respond? Thank you. Did Mr. Schultz want to respond?
Mr. Schultz, did you have any comment on that?
I didn't hear the question at all, ma'am. Sorry.
Is Longshore Lake looking outside its borders enough to address unchecked growth, traffic, new developments, and schools in Collier County?
I'm sorry, could you read it directly again to me? Sorry.
Is Longshore Lake looking outside its borders enough to address unchecked growth, traffic, new developments, and schools in Collier County?
I certainly think that we have issues, but for sure we have a problem, and I would hope that this board, and I'm sure they are presently talking to all the officials to ensure that we are going about this properly and what we can expect down the road. I know there's some plans for Lockley Road, we've seen all that. I would hope that the board, and I will continue to think that they will be looking at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of our committees have had the same people at the head for years. Are you for or against term limits of no more than 2 years? And we'll start with Mr. Schultz. I don't know if you heard the question. I can read it again to you.
Mr. Schultz, did you hear the question?
No, I did not, ma'am. Can you read it?
Some of our committees have had the same people at the head for years. Are you for or against term limits of no more than 2 years?
I think, I'm not sure about the committees, but I think the board should probably be allowed to go a bit longer than 2 years, board members. Probably 3 would be more optimal, I suspect.
Okay, thank you.
Again, this is certainly an issue that's very much in front of our current board. We just addressed the size of committees this evening to make them more effective, and more effective doesn't necessarily mean more people. We feel like it's going to be important for us to vet those who are volunteering to find out what their qualifications are, but the most qualified people on those particular committees. It only makes sense that we maximize this great depth of experience and wealth of knowledge that we have in the community.
I agree with what Phil says, so in the interest of brevity, that's correct. But yes to term limits from my position. I don't know if it should be 2 years or longer, but as long as there are people willing to fill those spots and think we need tournaments to give others that opportunity.
Agreed on the term limits for the committees, but I'd like to add one more thing. There are two committees in here that are very powerful. The ARB and the Community Standards Committee. Most of you are unaware of the Community Standards Committee. It's a committee of 5 residents that is tasked with finding people. And the board has no control of this committee other than the president assigns the people to the committee. I recently learned that we had a brand new resident that was only here for 2 months that was asked to be on this committee. I agree with Phil. We need to vet the residents before they are added to this committee, and the Community Standards Committee is the most powerful and important committee in the community. Thank you.
Most of the advisory committees today recommend no more than 3 years. And so I think that's probably a good number. For example, on finance, it takes a year just to understand the balance sheet and the income statement. If you're on landscape committee, it takes at least a year before you can spot the difference between a clusia and a podocarpus. And they talk in those Latin terms. So I think that I don't see anything wrong with 3 years as the maximum limit on committees.
I am a member of the Community Standards Committee. I was appointed by the president of the board based on my previous experience. At the time, I didn't know a whole lot about it, but as things go longer and I attend more of the meetings, I learn a lot more about how that committee works and the right way to handle things. Would it be better to have someone who's lived there a long time, who's in constant violation all the time and being fined all the time? Or is it better to have someone who's a little newer with fresh ideas being on that committee? I think as long as someone is willing to continue to be on the committee, I think you should leave it that way, as long as they're willing.
I think the board of directors should be a 2-term limit. In terms of the strongest committees of Longshore Lake, I disagree. Community Standards is not a strong committee. The strongest committee at Longshore Lake with the most input is the Finance Committee. And I'd like to thank Paul Juster as chairman of the committee for the excellent work he has done in his preparation and maintenance of the Finance Committee.
Thank you. In short, what is your vision for the Longshore Lake Club to all candidates? What is your vision for the Longshore Lake Club? I'm assuming you're talking about the clubhouse.
Well, as Phil said, there is a rejuvenation committee. The last mailing from the rejuvenation committee only listed resident comments with no proposal as to potential changes. My own feeling in the clubhouse is to change the physical plan, such as move the tennis office, and that could expand the fitness center by more than twice the size, and to move the administration offices off-site. This will help increase the community. One of the biggest ways of increasing revenue is to change the layout of the pub so the bar opens to the outside. Granted, tennis players don't drink much. Golfers do. But it has to be done.
I'm a golfer, I don't drink. My vision of Longshore Lake is wonderful. Again, I've been a member of a lot of different clubs. It's very rare to see so many of you here this evening interested in what's going on and willing to make this club better and better all the time. We have great people who are running it now,
and it's only going to get better.
The items that you've heard about from revitalization mostly came from the focus groups. And I can just list a few: snack bar, outdoor dining, improved bar, new fitness facility, all the things about the office changes, more storage, the kitchen might need to be improved, and there's a whole list. I'd like to see all of those. Now, whether we get to all of them, or half of the list, or a fourth of the list, that would depend on what it's all going to cost. But I would like to see all of those things in the future.
My vision for Longshore Lake. We have a lot of committees working on this. The Revitalization Committee is getting a ton of data. The focus groups provided us with a ton of data. I think we got to look at that very closely. I'm all about the lake. I'm a water guy. I design, build, own, and operate seawater desalination plants around the world. I love water quality. I'm in the water all the time. I'm kiteboarding. When most of you were kind of freaked out about their tornadoes coming in, I was packing up my kite gear, heading to the beach to go kiteboarding. I've seen what red tide does. And that's one of the reasons why I switched my landscaping to xeriscape. I didn't want to use fertilizer on the grass. I'm all about the lake and anything I can do for the lake. We don't come to the restaurant that much. And I know a lot of residents, our home audience especially, a lot of people in here use the restaurant quite a bit. The people at home, only 50% of the people vote. I tried to get some data on what percentage of the residents use the restaurant. I think it's less than 50%. I would like to see us offer a resolution where we can get more people here. Immokalee Road traffic is only going to get worse. I would love to see, we have some really interesting neighbors. Once I decided to run for the board, I started meeting a lot more people. We got a lot of really interesting, smart people in this community, and I want to meet them more. I'd like to spend a lot more time out with them. So I think we got a lot of committees working on where the direction of Longshore Lake. The club needs some work, fitness center needs some work, but we really are a lake and tennis community with a restaurant. So I'd like to see more people up here. The home audience is my key.
I think that a lot of the ideas that have been floated around through the focus groups are great ideas. To be brief, updated facilities where more people will come. Whatever brings the people here, if it's longer hours at a restaurant, change in our physical plan. The events that I enjoyed the most are the ones that pulled in everybody from the community, like Winterfest, Halloween party, the Christmas tailgate.
Well, she stole my thunder, but that's okay, because it shows that we have common ground here. So my vision is to see what we see in the parking lot 2 or 3 times a year, right here, in this building and around these grounds. The best events that we've had have not been in this building. And I feel very strongly that we need to renovate, revitalize, and bring about whatever those changes are and those amenities and those experiential things that are going to bring all of those young faces, all these young families that are buying homes in this community into our community so we can welcome them.
Yeah, we don't recognize that we have a 30-year-old development now, and we have to improve the look of the facilities, bring them up to the 2022 and beyond standard. We understand we have to look after the jobs that the strategic planning committee is putting forward. All those things are great recommendations, but they're all going to cost money, and we have to make and find the funds available to improve the whole physical plan that we have presently. That is my vision. Starting with clubhouse, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are several questions about revitalization, renovation. So I'm going to try to pick out the ones that are more specific, because I think we've done a lot of responses that are pretty general. And this one is, as a board member, what is your position regarding improvements to the gym facility? And we'll start with Mr. Schultz. Mr. Schultz.
I'm sorry I missed that question.
As a board member, what is your position regarding improvements to the gym facility?
The gym is another one that's high on the list of the strategic plan committee, and it needs to be expanded and upgraded. That's my position. They are exactly correct. Yes, sir.
I'm actually disqualified to answer this because I'm sleeping with the co-chair of the fitness and active lifestyle committee. But I'm going to give it a shot anyhow. We have 560 plus homes in this community, and we have a definite wrong size for our current fitness and activity room. We've visited other clubs as part of our revitalization project, looked at what other clubs are doing, and what we have is woefully inadequate. I think it's pretty obvious that we need to do something more. Everybody's about fitness. The way we eat, what we do, how we move our bodies around, and that includes everyone. So for those of you who are out there that are in your 80s, that doesn't mean that we're overlooking you in lieu of and in deference to the younger folks that are moving in this community. There's going to be a need for something for everyone, including physical therapy. Every one of these new clubs that we're seeing have a physical therapy room in their community. I've had physical therapy many times. I'm on retainer with an orthopedic surgeon. And it's incredible how hard it is to get that done. You can get your surgery done and then you can't find a person to do your PT. But we could actually offer that right here in our community. We don't pay for that. That person will gladly set up shop here and be able to take care of our needs. So, thank you.
I agree with an expanded facility with more and better equipment, also room for group classes, and I'd love to see some ability to have recreation on the lake, such as, some of the communities, Bonita Bay, Pelican Bay, have racks with kayaks that you can just borrow. And not everybody here has a kayak, but we share a great lake.
Yeah, Phil and Denver hit the nail on the head with the fitness center. I don't use the fitness center as much as I probably should anymore. I used to use it. My wife Terry was involved in the Quail Creek Fitness Center revitalization. So it's very close to her heart, and everybody who has ever used our fitness center knows it's woefully inadequate. I don't know what the solution is yet, but we have a lot of people working on it, and I agree.
There's no question the fitness center needs to be redone, enlarged, rebuilt, whatever. But it's not because we want it, it's also for competition, for real estate values, for the ability to sell your house, for somebody to come here and like the fitness facility and buy a house here. So there's other reasons besides just a bigger fitness facility that we should all support that.
I agree with Bill. The fitness center has to be renovated, has to be updated. It should be a vital part of this clubhouse. It will not cost somebody to move in here, but it is an amenity that's important.
Thank you. At each meeting, there is a moment for resident comments. What is the purpose, and are they ever addressed? At each meeting, there is a moment for resident comments. What is the purpose, and are they ever addressed? We'll start with Nan.
As I mentioned in my initial presentation, there are resident comments at the beginning of a board meeting. The resident states what he thinks, and as far as my opinion, they very rarely, if ever, are addressed to the resident and taken action. This has to be changed. I guess the key word is transparency.
I don't know about them being addressed, but again, like I said earlier, I've been to several board meetings and there are very few of us here. So if you think that's an issue, come to the board meetings and speak up.
resident comments have been by people that read the agenda ahead of time and they see what's coming. So that's an important thing too. Read the agenda ahead of time. If there's an issue on there that you need to talk about, then come to the board meeting and you can stand up and say that. Now, I am not sure if we are allowed to answer those questions. I don't know if Florida law, I know Florida law allows you to state your comments, but I don't know if we are allowed to address them during the meeting.
In the community in Illinois that I moved from, we dealt with the same issue on our board of trustees. And at least in Illinois, it was allowed, and they changed the agendas to have resident comment at the beginning, trustee comment in the middle, and then resident comment again at the end. I think it's worth looking into.
Mr. Schultz, do you have an answer to that question?
Well, would you repeat that again? Sorry.
At each meeting, there is a moment for resident comments. What is the purpose and are they ever addressed?
I suspect that I don't understand the purpose of them actually. That's why I suggested that we have some questions and answers, but they're written down prior to the meeting. I'm sure they're discussed behind, after, or beyond the meeting, but we don't ever seem to get, we don't ever get a resolution. That's why I'm suggesting we have questions with answers at each meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we're starting back here with you, Mr. Schultz. Our covenants need updating. What tangible steps would you take to start the process?
What was the first part of that again? I'm sorry.
Our covenants need updating. What tangible steps would you take to start the process?
Well, I think we need to have off the top of my head, I think we need to have a little committee put together who has experience in this and writing. And maybe we have to have, I don't know what the association has, but they probably have a lawyer who should probably be involved in some of this as well. That would be my initial thoughts on that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm not sure everybody even knows the definition of covenant, but it's actually a law or a life or death swearing of an oath. So what we need to appreciate is the very nature of covenants in a situation like this where we are in a community, is we as a board or even as a committee cannot, without great expertise being brought in, change those rules and regulations. That is one of the steps that we're putting it forward in our strategic plan this year. So it is not about getting a bunch of people in the community to say, well, I like this, and I like this, and let's do this. That's not the way covenants are written. It's a very, very extensive and expensive process, which is why we haven't done it for the last 30 years. We have a cobbled together a set of covenants, rules, and regulations that we've had pretty much in existence since this community was developed. So please understand that it's not necessarily going to be something that's going to be undertaken by a brief visit with some committee members. It's going to be a very deep legal process, and there's a cost.
I'm not going to answer, but I just saw a mass exodus of people.
Yeah.
The whole audience is still here, so I'm just going to pass it. We got to keep on engaged here.
Well, it's actually very good timing because we are running out of questions and our audience is disappearing. So we decided we're just going to wrap it up now. And I just want to thank everyone, all the candidates for participating in this forum, to share their ideas and thoughts as potential members of our board of directors. Remember to get your election ballots to the office no later than 1:00 p.m. on Tuesday, March 15th.
Thank you, and the bar is still open. Thanks again.